Attitudable opens the door to a new world of people transforming lives and the way we do business. This is a space to share ideas, dreams, experiences with the conviction that attitudable humans can attain anything. Welcome to our podcast. Today, we are honored to have with us Scott MacArthur. Scott is a professional speaker and workplace of the future specialist who is embodiment of the so-called gig economy. He has been involved in transformation programs in over 200 organizations globally, including Virgin, Amazon, KPMG, MOD, and NHS, and had successful careers as a scientist and academic. Welcome, Scott.
Hi, very nice to be here. Thank you for asking me.
It's an honor having you today with us. I wanted to talk about, well, many things today, but mainly as an expert, as you are in all these employee experiences and everything related to our own jobs. What can you tell us about this pandemic, COVID-19? How can this impact our lives and our work, of course, and our work focus? I mean, how can will be able to still concentrate or try to focus on our work?
That's a lovely question to start the conversation. I suspect people will be asking the same question all over the world. It's a very complex question, and one that I sometimes think the media in particular, and the government specifically all over the world, try to oversimplify. So I'll have a go at giving you an overview of what I think could happen in terms of the workplace and in terms of people working in those workplaces. There's undoubtedly going to be a spectrum of responses from those like me and you who enjoy working from home, enjoy one of the great poets, Charles Bukowski, said, "Isolation is a gift," and for you and I think that's probably true. I like being on my own. I like spending time with my books and my head.
Your thoughts, yes.
And there will be people like that. Many of us will suddenly just rediscover our passion for being with ourselves and being, at home. On the other end of the scale, there will be people who will be suffering stress, strain. They will be feeling alone. They will be feeling broken. They'll be feeling left behind from their workplace. And that is the spectrum that we've got to deal with and to think about when we return when we return back to the new future. And I think that unlike many, I don't think there's going to be a huge revolution as a consequence of this, because let's face it, companies are there for a particular reason, and that is to make money usually. And those that pull the purse strings will demand that things get back to a reasonably normal situation. However, I think there's a number of things that could happen that could be quite interesting for your listeners and for everyone across the world, because one or two things are very interesting. One is this: if you look at the environment that we're all working in now, it doesn't matter if you're in South America, whether you're in North America, Europe, Australia, Hong Kong, China, we are increasingly in the retail market and in the food environment. We're looking for personalization. So we're looking for, I'm sure you've seen the Coke cans with your name on. You've seen the latte with your picture on at the coffee shop. That's called personalization, and it's happening everywhere, driven mainly in Asia, in Japan, but coming into North America and into Europe. I'm not sure of the South American situation, but I know that it's coming into culture. And I think that only a fool would say that in the next 5 years, people will be looking for personal goods outside of work. We'll be looking for collective agreements and collective environments inside work. I think we will start to say, okay, I want the contract that I have with this employer to be for me, not to be the same as everyone else. Now that is a huge challenge, because we have spent decades, over 100 years, developing, what we call collective bargaining, contracts of employment, trade unions, staff associations. And I think the public have seen a glimpse in the last few weeks of what it's like to run your own life, what it's like to have a personal life, have personal experience of going to work. So I think that could have been the pace of that change could have been given an injection of pace, even more pace. And I think it's reasonably safe to say that city life, whether that's in Buenos Aires or in London or New York, will change a little bit. I think we will have more people working from home because they've discovered that they can. You have organisations who, well, again, let's face it, some organisations have been very poor in how they've responded. And I think employees are going to say, I'm not happy about this. I need you to change the way you behave, company, or I'm leaving. So we've had examples in the United Kingdom where a very well-known global brand called Virgin has broken a significant level of trust that it had with the public. And in the United States, one of the most famous universities in the world, Harvard, happens to be one of the richest universities in the world with $40 billion in the bank, has been laying off the people who most need the money to live. So there has been some, I think, commercial suicide committed by some of these organizations. And so I think that will change. I think people will demand that companies actually believe what they say. And I think that will be an acid test moving forward. And for the next, a colleague of mine called Ben Witter, who's a well-known expert in employee engagement and the employee experience, said to me just last week, he said, I think for the next 5 years, employees will be able to go to companies and say, what did you do during COVID? Were you consistent with your values? And I think that could be a big change. So I think there's obviously I've simplified it, but there is a huge spectrum of things that could happen. And I think hopefully I've outlined some of them.
Yes, like the way you manage that in that unprecedented moment. How did the company manage that, and how did they treat the employees, or how it worked out?
Yes, exactly that.
And
exactly.
so differently, no? Sometimes, as you said, some companies did it or try to do it better than others, and certainly did or are doing, and it helps.
Yeah, and it's been a spectrum. There are some organizations that you may have thought would not do it well, but they have. So it's been both ways. It's not been all one direction. I think the media gets carried away with the negative. But for example, one of the companies in the United Kingdom called Marks and Spencers, which is a retail company, does clothing and food. They have done a terrific job from day one. They did a great job. So and have treated their staff very well. And I was speaking to a senior person there just this week, and she was telling me that people are quite surprised at how well they've dealt with COVID, because they've been having some difficult times with profit levels, etc. So it is a spectrum. It is a complex issue, and the outcomes no one really knows. But I think we can make the speculations that I've outlined.
Yes, you're right. Like really, what were the values, and if the company, of course, every company has their own values. If they were like, if you walk the talk, like is everything
exactly that. Yeah.
Exactly that. As on your TED Talk on workplace of the future, your TED Talk that you talk about how the attention and all the stories that you tell that like will be the stories of COVID stories, storytelling of how did it work.
Absolutely. There will be one thing you can guarantee. there will be dozens of TED Talks about COVID in the next 2 years.
Yes, you're right. and the importance of storytelling, as you also mentioned in all your talks.
Yeah, I think storytelling, I call it the DNA of our cultures. I find it disappointing on the one hand, but also quite exciting on the other, that we haven't explored storytelling in our lives as much as perhaps we once did. And sometimes when I'm being slightly cheeky, someone will ask me what I do, and I say I'm an archaeologist of my own life. And I get these funny looks. And what I mean by that is I'm always looking for stories in what I've done, what I've forgotten, what I've experienced, what I've recorded, to share, because stories is how you gain credibility, how you gain, in my case, an audience. You don't go out and tell people what others have said unless you really need to. You don't go out and just say, oh, Simon Sinek says, or one of the top gurus says, because that's their story, not yours. And I think that companies have to more and more realize that there's an untapped resource of stories in all their organizations that they could be really, really gaining from. But companies are traditionally very poor at all levels of storytelling.
Yes, I think it's fascinating, and it's a side, let's say, that every business has to develop and apply, and it's not implemented, and it's
no.
And sometimes you think, no, yes, I know how to. It's the story of my life, the story of my career, and we're not doing it right.
No. I mean, I just this morning I was making a YouTube video about stories and about how using stories and experience you can actually speed up your success. You don't have to wait. You can learn from other people's stories and then use them as a platform. So even at a personal level, if you're an entrepreneur, look at, it's very important to have your own perspective, but you can learn from the mistakes of others and then stand on that and go up a level, much quicker than if you just make the mistakes yourself. So, use other people's mistakes to help you avoid them. And I know that sounds slightly trite, but I actually think it's true. I think it's a very powerful way to frame improving success.
Sure. And on your YouTube channel, you have many different extracts or parts of how we can, in different levels, try to implement that.
Yeah. I mean, on my YouTube channel, I try to, it's all stories. If you've watched any of them, it's all stories. But I try very hard to say to people, here's a mental model or an idea that you could use, that you could take and implement in your business to help you get to the workplace of the future. So today I've been recording another one about activism today, because I think companies it'd be really exciting if they did this, that companies could turn into activists. What does that mean? Well, that means that they could be saying, okay, one of our purposes, you've got employee satisfaction, you've got customer satisfaction, but another one might be environmental protection. And they could become an activist in that area. And companies talk about these things, but they don't really mean it on the whole. But I would love to see companies getting really serious about it. So that's what I do on my YouTube channel. I try to give ideas that I've either experienced or that have come to me that I think that companies could look at and use and individuals could thrive in. That's what I try.
That's awesome. You help the people try to get that, because it's not easy. It's not an easy task. Sometimes you cannot see it.
Yeah, very, very difficult. And and it's why I use a lot of art as well as stories, because, for example, you and I obviously speak different languages, and I'm sure you can understand my Scottish accent.
Yes, for sure. You speak very well.
But pictures are take out even more of the noise. They take the accent out. They take, you know, and again, you know, I work with artists to create images that summarize how people are feeling, what they're experiencing, you know, the good and the bad and the possible that they could be involved in. And when people see the images, I almost don't have to say anything. I can just show them an image and then walk away, because they go, they just get it. Whereas with words, it can be very difficult. But you've got to find a particular type of artist to do it, and I'm very lucky to have 2 or 3 colleagues that can do it for me.
Sure.
Because I can't draw.
It's awesome. And one, just to round up, you say that we can try to develop also a good enough mindset together with the storytelling and all that, like telling through the telling of stories, we change our minds. And how do you think that we can develop a good enough mindset for our own careers?
That's a lovely question. Thank you. A good enough mindset is about one of the great blocks to success, and that's perfectionism. Mm-hmm. We get educated in most cultures to, you know, be top of the class, to get it right all the time. And one of the lessons, either as a business person or a writer or a podcaster, is that if you wait until it's perfect, it won't happen. You're better to get it down than waiting to get it right. You know, you're better to start badly than wait to start perfectly. And I think that people have to realize that there's a good example. This is a really simple example and a good metaphor for it. We are recording this today using Zoom. Yeah. And people will tell you that you need to get a high resolution camera to use Zoom. Yes. No, you don't. The reason for that is that Zoom compresses all the video to what's called 720. So it doesn't matter if you've got a 4K or an HD camera, it's only ever going to work at 720, because that is, you know, the level that the camera sends out to everybody. And that's an example. So if you're waiting to get the perfect system when you don't actually need the perfect system, you're holding yourself back. So it's better to get it out there than waiting for perfection. And I think there's so many examples all over the world of that. Sometimes we have like excuses just to protect ourselves from showing up. Or I mean, on the video, I don't know if you're going to show them on the video, but you can see there's a mark on my face. Yeah. And I had an accident the other day. Something fell on my head and it really hurt. And I've got a mark on my face. Now, a lot of people would say, oh, you shouldn't go into podcasts with a mark on your face. But I wonder if anyone had actually noticed it, you know, because you just have to keep going. You can't wait to have the perfect hair, the perfect glasses, the perfect weight, anything. You've just got to keep going. And if you do that, you're more likely to find a successful path than dreaming about it. Awesome advice, the best advice. Well, Scott, thanks a lot for all your tips, all your suggestions. And where can people find you? The best place for people to find me and the advice that I'm sending out to the world is on YouTube. And if they just type my name, Scott MacArthur, into that, they'll find me. Probably via one of my TEDx talks, but they'll find my channel there. It's called Scott MacArthur, my channel. I'm very active on Twitter, and thank you very much for joining my Twitter stream. I saw you did that earlier. Thank you. Yes. At Scott_MacArthur, and that's spelled MCARTHUR, and Scott has 2 T's. So they're the main 2 platforms that I spend my time on. Thanks. We will write everything on the show notes so for people to follow you if you don't have already, and we can keep connected with all the new advices and tips. Thank you very much. Thank you. It's been a pleasure. Thank you. Thanks a lot, Scott. It's been a pleasure.